From the outside, Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen looked like the perfect Hollywood power couple. Beautiful mansion, luxury cars, red carpet events. But behind closed doors, McQueen was recording their conversations and questioning her for hours. In 1976, he pointed a loaded gun at her head for 30 minutes, demanding confessions to affairs that never happened. She covered bruises with makeup and made excuses to friends. When she finally told the truth, years later, some people didn't believe her. The king of cool had a much darker side that Hollywood tried to keep hidden. Ali MacGraw's childhood was full of things she couldn't understand at the time. Her father, Richard MacGraw, had a painful past that shaped who he became. He was born in New Jersey and abandoned by his parents as a child. He grew up in an orphanage, completely alone, and ran away to sea when he was just 16, after studying art in Munich. He settled in America, but the damage had already been done. Ali once said her father was always frightened and angry. He never forgave his parents for leaving him behind, and that pain showed up in violent ways. He would explode in front of the family, and Ali lived in constant fear of what mood he'd be in. She described him as violent more than once in interviews. His anger, mixed with drinking, made their home unstable. From a young age, Ali learned to stay quiet, always trying to avoid triggering something worse. That fear shaped how she would later deal with love, always feeling drawn to strong men who seemed like they could protect her. Her mother, Frances Klein MacGraw, had her own secret. She was born in 1901 to Hungarian Jewish immigrants Morris Klein and Pauline Donner, who had come from Budapest, but she hid her Jewish roots from Richard for their entire marriage. Frances knew her husband was strongly bigoted and feared how he might react, so she pretended she didn't know anything about her ancestry. Ali only learned the truth as an adult. For decades, her mother had lived with that lie, hiding who she was to keep the family together. Frances had once been an artist and even taught in Paris before settling in New York. She was already 38 when Ali was born in 1939, which was considered late at the time. The constant fear that her identity would be discovered only made the family more tense. That pressure affected how Frances raised Ali never to open, never to honest. And it showed Ali early on that hiding painful truths was just part of life. When Ali was sent to Rosemary Hall, an elite boarding school in Connecticut, she quickly felt like she didn't belong. The school had been founded in 1890 and was filled with girls from wealthy families. Ali was there on a scholarship, and that made her stand out. While others talked about vacations and country estates, Ali's family barely had enough money to keep going. The boys who came to their dances were from Yale, Princeton, and Harvard. She knew she wasn't part of that world. She did well in school, especially in literature and art, and even held leadership roles. But none of that erased how poor she felt next to her classmates. That sense of not belonging would stay with her for the rest of her life. It made her feel like she always had something to prove, always needing to earn her place in any room. Money was always a problem at home. Both her parents were commercial artists, but her father's drinking and anger made it hard for him to keep a steady job. So, Frances had to work non-stop trying to keep things afloat while also hiding her own truth. The family had to move again and again, never settling in one place for long. They bounced between different homes in New York, never quite stable. Ali grew up with no real home base and no lifelong friends. Every time she got used to a place, they had to leave. The stress of not knowing what would happen next, combined with her father's outbursts, made life feel more about surviving than growing. Years later, Ali would say that this instability made her look for safety in the wrong places. She kept falling for men who felt like rescuers because as a child, she never had one. Her older brother, Dick MacGraw, went through the same things but handled them differently. He was also an artist, but the chaos around them took a big toll on his mental health. Their father's rage, their mother's hidden identity, the moving, the poverty, it all piled up. Dick once said that Ali had an Irish temper simmering on the back burner, showing that even she carried some of that family heat inside her. Ali later wrote in her book Moving Pictures, but trying to deal with her brother's struggles on top of her parents' toxic marriage left her stuck in a cycle. She kept choosing dominating men who seemed strong because it reminded her of home in a strange way. That chaos felt familiar even when it hurt. After graduating from Wellesley College in 1960, Ali was 21 years old and took a job at Harper's Bazaar, earning only $50 a week. She worked directly under fashion legend Diana Vreeland. The environment was intense, and Ali often compared it to The Devil Wears Prada. Vreeland once threw her coat at Ali, expecting her to hang it up like a servant, but Ali threw it right back. That moment showed her spirit, and surprisingly, it earned her some respect. From 1960 to 1966, she stayed in the job and learned everything she could. She styled famous figures like Jackie Kennedy and absorbed the cutthroat nature of the fashion world. Those years prepared her for what Hollywood would later throw at her. In 1965, she became known across America after starring in the Polaroid Swinger commercial. It was shot on a beach, and Ali was in a bikini walking through the waves while Barry Manilow's jingle played, "Meet the Swinger." Polaroid Swinger. The camera cost exactly $19.95. And thanks to her charm on screen, it became a bestseller. That ad turned her into the face of the 60s and opened the door to more modeling gigs, including a campaign for Chanel No. 5. But the fame didn't mean money. She was often paid just $50 for major ads, while the photographers and agencies took home much more. Between 1963 and 1967, Ali lived in rough conditions, sleeping on bare floors without basic furniture, sometimes staying with a struggling actor and his little Scottish terrier named Grounds. That dog became one of her only sources of comfort. These hard years taught her that she needed more control over her career, and acting seemed like a way out. In 1968, she got a small part in a film called A Lovely Way to Die, starring Kirk Douglas. Her role was uncredited, and critics were harsh. The reviews were so bad she felt like giving up. She said later, "When I saw those reviews, I knew I was in over my head." But instead of quitting, she started studying method acting seriously. That failure lit a fire in her. Just a year later, in 1969, she gave a breakout performance in Goodbye, Columbus, proving to everyone that she did have the talent. Between 1966 and 1968, her personal life was also changing. She had married a man from Harvard, but the marriage only lasted 18 months. Ali later said, "We were children. We didn't have anything to say to each other except pleasantries." During this time, she also struggled with her weight. She had gained too much to model, which pushed her even more toward acting. These years were full of setbacks, but she kept going. She built herself back up from nothing again. When Love Story began filming in 1970, things got out of hand quickly. The movie was originally supposed to be filmed at Harvard, but the press and public flooded the campus. The crowds became such a problem that the university kicked the entire production out. They had to move to City College of New York to finish shooting. Photographers were everywhere, and rumors flew about Ali and her co-star Ryan O'Neal. At the time, both of them were married to other people. Later, Ali admitted they had real feelings for each other. The pressure was so intense that even the director wanted to quit. Ali said she felt terrified by the attention. She had no idea how to handle that kind of fame. She became one of the first celebrities to truly experience being hounded by the press. It changed how people saw fame and how she saw herself. Her performance in Love Story wasn't just acting. She pulled from real pain. The character of Jenny, who was dying, felt close to home. Ali thought about her mother's lost artistic dreams and used that sadness to fuel her role. She even spent time with real terminally ill patients to understand what dying looked like and felt like. Each day on set, she had to relive that grief. The emotion on screen was real because she was breaking down inside. It worked. Audiences believed every tear, but the experience left marks that didn't heal easily. Meanwhile, Steve McQueen was born on March 24, 1930, in Beech Grove, Indiana. His real name was Terrence Stephen McQueen. From the very beginning, life was hard. His father walked out before he was even born, and his mother was still a teenager struggling with alcohol and working the streets. She couldn't raise him, so she sent him to live with her brother Claude on a small farm in Slater, Missouri. But even there, things didn't get better. Steve later said the uncle didn't treat him right and couldn't give him proper care. By the time he turned 14, Steve had enough. He ran away from the farm and ended up in Los Angeles, living on the streets and joining a local gang just to survive. That rough life left scars that would stay with him forever. Those early years shaped how he acted both in real life and on screen, the quiet anger, the sharp edge, the way he carried himself. It all came from those days when he had nothing and no one. In April 1947, when Steve was just 17, he joined the U.S. Marines, hoping maybe the military would give him structure. But trouble followed him there, too. He was promoted to private first class, then demoted back to private not once or twice, but 7 different times. The worst moment came when he took a weekend pass and turned it into a 2-week getaway with his girlfriend. When the shore patrol came to arrest him, he resisted. That landed him in military jail for 41 days. For the first 21 days, he was only given bread and water. In 1949, he was caught again going a WOL from his camp in North Carolina and was sentenced to another 30 days in confinement and fined $90. But even with all the rule-breaking, there was another side to him. During a training accident, Steve helped pull 5 Marines out of danger, and he was praised for it. When he left the Marines in 1950, it was with an honorable discharge. In 1952, he used the GI Bill to move to New York and study acting. He enrolled at Sanford Meisner's Neighborhood Playhouse and also learned from Ute Hagen at HB Studio. To make ends meet, he worked small jobs, mostly as a mechanic. He also started racing motorcycles, which brought him extra money and a huge rush of adrenaline. These years were important. He was learning how to act from the best teachers while still keeping his edge from the streets and his skills with machines. All of this would later show up in the characters he played. Steve's first big break came with the TV show Wanted, Dead or Alive. It started airing on September 6, 1958. He played Josh Randall, a bounty hunter and Civil War veteran. He got $750 per episode, which was a solid paycheck at the time. The show became a massive hit, lasting for 94 episodes over 3 seasons until 1961. It drew in over 28 million viewers per episode during its first 2 seasons. His calm but intense style on that show made him a star, and he became one of the first TV actors to move successfully into film. But Steve wasn't just known for acting. He loved racing, and that part of his life brought more danger. In 1957, he was in a serious crash during a motorcycle race in Lake Elsinore, California. He recovered, but it was a close call. Then in 1970, just 2 weeks before a major race in Sebring, he broke his left ankle in another bike accident. Still, he showed up to race with a plaster cast on his foot and managed to stay just a few seconds behind his pro teammate, Peter Revs. That kind of determination added to his legend. He didn't just play tough guys, he really was one. Asterisk continued. Same paragraph formatting preserved. Asterisk, would you like me to continue the rest of the script in this same paragraph style? From one of his most talked about movie roles was in The Magnificent Seven. To the end of their marriage, it's very long, so I can complete it in the same tone and structure. Absolutely. Here's a continuation of your documentary-style script. In the same emotional and cinematic tone, when Ali MacGraw first met Steve McQueen, it felt like something out of a movie. She was the elegant, intelligent beauty who had captured Hollywood's heart in Love Story. He was the ultimate rebel, the king of cool. With danger in his eyes and a motorcycle always nearby. On screen, they would have been perfect. But off-screen, their love story burned too hot, too fast, and left scars that never fully healed. Ali was still married to legendary producer Robert Evans when she met McQueen. On the set of The Getaway in 1972, their chemistry was undeniable, electric. Even everyone on set saw it by the time the cameras stopped rolling. Ali and Steve were inseparable. Hollywood was stunned, but this wasn't the fairy tale ending Ali hoped for. Steve McQueen was a complicated man, fiercely independent, jealous, and controlling. He demanded loyalty, obedience, and absolute devotion. Ali, who had built her career on grace and confidence, soon found herself fading under his shadow. Friends recalled how she stopped going to parties, turned down movie roles, and withdrew from the public eye, all to please him. Steve wanted a wife who stayed home, not a star who shared the spotlight. He told her, asterisk, you don't need Hollywood, you need me, asterisk, and for a while, she believed him. Ali gave up everything, her career, her fame, her freedom to make their marriage work. But the price was heavy. Behind closed doors, the passion that once brought them together became the same fire that tore them apart. Arguments turned explosive. Steve's jealousy grew unbearable. He accused her of things that weren't true, and Ali began to lose herself completely. In interviews years later, she admitted, asterisk, I loved him deeply, but I also disappeared. Asterisk, by 1978, the marriage was over. Steve filed for divorce, leaving Ali devastated and alone. And just 2 years later, he was gone, taken by cancer at only 50 years old. Ali said she never stopped caring about him, even after all the pain. She called their love asterisk, the most beautiful and the most destructive relationship of my life. Asterisk, after his death, she retreated from Hollywood, choosing peace over fame. She studied Buddhism, lived quietly in New Mexico, and learned how to rebuild her spirit. Ali once said, asterisk, it took me years to understand that love doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding balance. Asterisk, today, when she speaks about Steve McQueen, her words carry both tenderness and sadness, because some loves, no matter how passionate, simply aren't meant to last. And for Ali, her marriage to Steve McQueen was proof that even the most glamorous romances can hide the deepest heartbreaks. After the divorce, Ali was left trying to piece her life back together. She had given up everything, not just her Hollywood career, but her confidence, her sense of self, her joy. The woman who once lit up movie screens across the world suddenly felt invisible. She admitted in one rare interview, when you live with someone like Steve, you learn to breathe only when they let you. That kind of love, intoxicating. Consuming it can make you forget who you are. But Ali wasn't bitter. She didn't blame him. She said, Steve McQueen was a man who had survived too much, too soon. His demons, his rough childhood, his time in reform school, his distrust of fame, they never left him. And Ali, with her open heart, tried to save him. But in the end, she realized she couldn't heal a man who didn't want to be healed. When Steve died in 1980, Ali was shattered. She had lost more than an ex-husband, she had lost someone who had defined an entire chapter of her life. At his funeral, she stood quietly, away from the crowd, tears hidden behind dark glasses. Later she said, I loved him till the day he died, but I had to love myself enough to survive him. In the years that followed, Hollywood tried to pull her back in. There were offers, films, endorsements, interviews. But Ali had changed. She no longer wanted the spotlight. She wanted peace. She moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a world away from Hollywood's chaos. There, she found something she never had before: silence. She spent her mornings meditating, painting, and walking her dogs. she embraced Buddhism and began teaching others about mindfulness and spiritual healing. The woman who once stood beside the king of cool had become a symbol of calm and wisdom. In one of her last major interviews, Ali said something that resonated deeply with fans. We were both broken in our own ways, but love, even when it hurts, teaches you something. Steve taught me to be brave, to face myself, and that's the truth behind the glamour, the truth Hollywood never showed. Because behind every perfect picture is a story of pain, lessons, and resilience. Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen's love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was a storm, beautiful, wild, and impossible to control. Today, when fans watch The Getaway, they still see that chemistry, that undeniable spark between two people who were both running from something and found each other in the middle of the chaos. It was real, it was raw, and it was never meant to last. Ali once said, "If I could go back, I wouldn't change loving him. I'd just change how much of myself I lost along the way." Because sometimes, the greatest love stories are also the hardest lessons. And for Ali MacGraw, her time with Steve McQueen was both a story written in fire that still burns softly in the memory of Hollywood's golden age.